Hello, and welcome to the Universal Mind channel. This is episode number 1. Did you know that according to the World Population Review, almost 166,000 people die every day here on Earth? And in the United States, a little over 8,000 people die every day. Now, keep those figures in mind and realize that NASA's Hubble and Webb telescopes have looked back to the dawn of time, to almost the very time light first appeared after the Big Bang. And all through the universe, everywhere back in time, no heaven and no hell. Is it possible that all those people who die every day, at least here in the United States with our emphasis, our cultural emphasis upon the existence of a physical heaven and a physical hell, is it possible that those people die every day not knowing the truth, not knowing really where they go after they die? Now, Eastern philosophies believe in reincarnation, or as they call it, rebirth, because they feel you can only be incarnated one time. So there is no such thing as reincarnation, but there is rebirth, they believe. Is heaven and hell merely creations of our ancestors' imagination, their fears, and their hopes? If it's true that there is no physical heaven or hell, as the Hubble and Webb telescopes suggest, do we just cease to exist? Or is it possible that we live from life to life, not our physical bodies, but our consciousness, our identities, our individualities, our soul? Is it possible we carry them with us? Is it possible that there is a scientific reason how that can happen, using natural laws, physical laws, not myth or magic, but natural laws that control the process, and that it's very natural? Eastern philosophies believe that to be true, and have believed that for millennia. I believe that there are many people, an increasing number of people here in the West, that are beginning to believe the same thing. Why do I think so? Well, back in 2021, the Pew Research Center, and I want to give credit to Justin Nortley and Claire Jesowitz and their team at the Pew Research Center, they did a study back in 2021 of a random sampling of all adult Americans. And you know what they found? They found that 33% of all adult Americans that they sampled believe in some form of reincarnation or rebirth. Now, I'm a lawyer, so definitions matter to me. What words mean matter to me. I'm trained to that degree. What did they do to define reincarnation with the individuals that were participating in their study? Well, they defined, the Pew Research Center defined reincarnation as people will be reborn again and again in this world. Do you believe it? Let me repeat that. People will be reborn again and again in this world. Now that eliminates heaven, that eliminates hell, that basically centers it right here on earth. Do you believe that you come back again? And 33% of adult Americans believe that to be true. So if you believe that, you're not alone. In fact, you're part of a growing number of people that believe in that. To the extent that we're going to break down the demographics, in the 18 to 29 age group, 40% of Americans in that age group believe in rebirth. No heaven, no hell, except what we make in this world, on this earth. 30 to 49 age group, 37%. The 50 to 64 age group, 30%. And in my age group, the 65-year plus, us old folk, almost a quarter of us old folk, 23%, believe in rebirth, some form of rebirth, that we come back again and again in this world. Interestingly enough, to break it down even more, 27% men, 38% women. I'm going to tell you what happened to me, why we're here today. This is the Universal Mind Channel. We intend this to be a spiritual home for all those who seek truth about their spiritual existence. Like you, we don't have answers, but we do invite you to join us as we search for those answers. Relying upon modern scientific discoveries and our shared life experiences, we'll seek together how the universal mind affects our lives. Now, if you have questions or would like to share your experiences with us on this channel, you may send us an email at theuniversalmindchannel@gmail.com. That's theuniversalmindchannel@gmail.com. We'll be happy to receive it, and we may actually comment on it at a future episode, future program. Why am I involved? I died when I was 6, many years ago. I'm in my 70s now. Back in the 50s, they didn't have any answers for asthma. And when I was born, I was 6 weeks premature, according to my family. My lungs were not developed. So when I was born, I was very ill and stayed ill for many years. The first 3-4 years of my life, they kept me in a crib. I was so sick. If I went outside, I would get bronchitis, and if I wasn't cared for, it would develop into pneumonia. Well, they didn't want to risk that, so they kept me in a crib. They put a sheet over top of the crib, and that's where I stayed for 3 years. Of course, every once in a while, I'd sneak out or climb out or whatever, but for the most part, I was in that crib with the sheet over, and there was a pan of boiling water creating steam. They thought that would help me breathe. Although I remember sometimes it made it even worse. And I remember staring through the bars of the crib watching TV and wishing to get out and wondering if I ever would. Well, eventually I went to kindergarten, and I came down with double pneumonia and almost died. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks. Doctors said, he's lucky. The antibiotics, penicillin, got him through this time. But next time he may not be so lucky. And we really suggest you take him and move to Arizona. Well, my grandfather, I lived with my grandfather, my grandmother, and my mom. And my grandfather had businesses. He was well connected in our town. Everybody knew him. Everybody loved him. And yet he sold everything and we all moved to Phoenix. We moved into a house on the last street of Phoenix. At that time, the last street was Pinchot Avenue. That's where we lived, right off of Thomas. I went to Lafayette Elementary, which is no more. Unfortunately, I have very fond memories of the short time I was there. I had very fond memories of that school. Yeah, I could walk there. My backyard was the desert, and beyond, and a little further back in my backyard, a lot further, was Camelback Mountain. Every day I'd wake up to Camelback Mountain. Back then, even in shadow, it was a spectacular sight. Somewhat ominous, always beautiful. I still remember it to this day. I hold it dear to my heart. Well, I went to first grade, came down with measles. A couple weeks later, came down with chickenpox. And then I came down with bronchitis. But I still insisted on going to school because I had missed so much with the chickenpox and the measles. I still kept going to school. I insisted on it. I was tired of not going to school. And I get worse. And eventually I was so sick, couldn't breathe. I was struggling to breathe. The teacher sent me home. Now I want you to understand how really sick this young kid was, this boy. 24/7, 365, it was a very, very difficult thing to breathe. It was like having an elephant on my chest, and quite frankly, I couldn't imagine anything worse. I told people I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, having to struggle to breathe. It's not that you can't. Asthma is a weird syndrome. You can suck in air all you want, but the chemical interactions, the osmotic process, the oxygen doesn't, you can suck in air, but the oxygen, the O2, doesn't get into your bloodstream. So all you're doing is sucking air, and you're basically suffocating even on a lung full of air because it doesn't translate in your bloodstream. So every day and every night, you wheeze, you struggle to breathe, and if you're not a fighter, it'll make you one or you die. It's that simple. You either fight for life or you die. So when I got home that day, after the teacher at Lafayette told me I had to go home, by the time I got home, I was passing out. Next thing I know, my family's rushing me in a car. Grandfather's in the front seat, he's driving the car. My grandmother's in the front seat, passenger side. My mom's got me in her lap, and I'm staring at the window in the back passenger, right-hand passenger side, in my mom's lap. She's cradling my head, and I'm a little woozy. And I'm watching the telephone poles just to try to distract me because every breath is just work, and it's wearing me out. And I'm watching the telephone poles go by, and it just kind of distracts me. And then all of a sudden, this beautiful white face floats on the outside of the car, comes up to the window and stops. Not floating anymore. It stops, and it's a woman's face and head. I see her hair. It's all white, marble white, the hair and the face. And she looks at me, and I can feel her compassion. And she thinks to me. She doesn't say anything. She's on the outside of a closed window. But she thinks to me, and I can hear her voice in my head. She says to me, "You don't have to suffer like this anymore. Come with us. We'll make sure you get a better body next time. Next life, you'll have a better body. All you got to do is say you're willing to come with us. We don't want you to have to suffer like this. You don't have to. Just surrender." I didn't know her. I loved my family. I didn't want to leave my family. So I didn't say anything. But I think she could tell because all of a sudden she disappeared. But as she left, I told my mom, Mom, there's this beautiful woman outside the car. She's telling me I can go with her and I can get another body next time. She starts screaming and crying hysterically. My grandfather, the car goes faster. I don't really care anymore. I've been able to stop breathing. I realize I can stop breathing, and I stop. And I'm fine. I'm fine. I don't have to breathe anymore. My mind is active. I'm aware, but my body is fading away. I'm losing touch with it. Now everything happens in a rush. We stop, the car stops, we arrive at the hospital, I'm shoved in some arms, and then I'm shoved in a doctor's arms, and he says, how long's it been since he stopped breathing? My grandfather says, right before we came through the double doors. And I knew that wasn't true. And so did the doctor, I think. Because he looked at me like, I could tell. He didn't believe it. I must have looked a little deathly. My body's put on a table with a lamp over the top, and I'm looking down from above that lamp at my body, and he's looking at my body. I think he's trying to figure out what's wrong with me and how to save me, because I am not breathing. At this time, as I'm looking at him struggle, because I kind of felt sorry for him. It was kind of obvious he didn't expect this to happen to him that day. He thought he was going to have a nice, easy day. Well, sorry. And he was trying to figure out, without any information, what was wrong with me. Because my family really wasn't communicating with him much. They were struggling with inner things, emotional things that they felt about the trauma of the moment. As I'm observing this, there's this disturbance above my head. And I'm almost at the ceiling. I'm above the lamps. At least my mind is. I'm looking down at the body that's on the table and the doctor leaning over and a nurse, two nurses, one on each side. There's this disturbance at the top near where the ceiling hits the upper part of the wall, that joint. A vortex appeared. No sound, just a circular vortex of light and shadow. And I'm staring at it, wondering what that was, when glowing orbs of white light come through that vortex. 4 on one side, 4 on the other. And in a short pause, and then the last one comes through the group of 4 on each side. It almost appeared like a procession. A male presence confronts me. I don't want to say confront, but approaches me mentally and says, you need to make a decision, and you need to make it now. Do you wish to come with us or not? If you come with us, we'll give you a better body. You don't have to suffer anymore. This is a commanding tone, not a compassionate one. This is a commanding tone. Someone in charge, someone that was used to authority. I could feel that. Well, I'm ready to go. One last look at my mom. She's whimpering in a handkerchief over on one side. My grandmother's staring off into space on another side. And over here, staring at the double doors, is my grandfather. My grandfather, who was in charge, always in control, was staring at those double doors, not only helplessly, but hopelessly. You could feel it. And I knew then, if I died, I went away, they would blame themselves and each other for what happened to me. I wasn't going to let that happen. if I had a choice, if they were going to give me a choice, whoever those people, whoever those entities were, I hesitate to call them people. Whoever they were, I didn't know them. I knew they had authority over me, over my condition. But they were giving me a choice. It was obvious that free will mattered to them. They couldn't violate free will. In certain circumstances, it's obvious when the body's dead already and the brain is dead. It's obvious what's going to happen. The consciousness goes. There's no choice. It's inevitable. It's a physical process. It's a physiological process. Death and dying. And we have to be adult about it, mature about it. So I said, no, I'm not going. As soon as I said that, I'm back in my body. I'm laying on that table. A needle is thrust in my chest, hypodermic, and I can breathe. And I can breathe fine. It was magic what that medicine was. What it was, I can only guess, maybe epinephrine. That's the only thing that makes sense. It's the only thing I think they had back in the 50s. Because this was before asthmatic medicine. I know because I was one of the first kids that got it when I was 8. The 3 pills, the yellow pill, the white pill for minimal, medium, you get a yellow, and the red capsule for serious stuff, for when you really couldn't breathe. That's all I took. And I knew what was in it, epinephrine. I knew it because the doctor told me when I was 8. That's what happened to me when I was 6. I died. Now let's explore that experience. We're told that we can come back again. Not that we can, we do. And that whoever it is that communicated with me, they can control what kind of bodies we get. That's interesting. Another thing, it's not so much what they said, but what they didn't say. They didn't talk about Jesus. They didn't talk about God. They didn't talk about Muhammad. They didn't talk about Moses. They didn't talk about Buddha. They didn't talk about Confucius. They didn't talk about any of the Indian. They didn't talk about anybody. Any of the prophets, angels that we've been taught for over 2,000 years, depending upon your faith. And I was raised Episcopalian. But they never talked about that. Religion didn't matter to them. And maybe it didn't exist for them. They didn't talk about heaven. They didn't talk about hell. They talked about life. Having another one. So, that's what I experienced. That's what happened to me when I was 6 years old. It leads me, especially in this time of the world, where we hear wars in the Middle East, wars in Ukraine, the threat of war between Russia and United Kingdom and NATO. North Korea has the bomb. Iran wants a bomb. Now, I mentioned before I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for 40 years. Before I was an attorney, I got a master's degree in international relations. Emphasis on counterterrorism. So those things matter to me. And it's interesting because I believe the universal consciousness is within each of us. And the universal consciousness is not silent in the face of oppression, autocracy, dictatorship, violence, greed, evil that men do and women. I do believe that consciousness is aware and that we share all of it. You can call it conscience, or you can call it just a shared consciousness that's deep-rooted within each of us. A connection between us, each other, and the universe. And we're going to explore that. We don't claim to have answers, but we will search, and we'll use modern scientific discoveries and our own personal experiences in that search for truth, because time may be getting short. I'm not an Armageddon person, but we have generals just today and yesterday and the past few days. Tobias L. Wood and two generals for the United Kingdom, Sir Nick Parker and Sir Patrick Sanders, were on Sky News Live saying it's past time for the United Kingdom to begin mobilization to prepare for war against Russia. That affects you, affects me, affects everyone. Because I can tell you, based upon, and I think we all kind of realize, based upon how much of Russia's conventional military hardware has been lost in Ukraine, and up to 500,000 of their men lost, Russia doesn't have much to fight with other than nuclear weapons in a war against NATO. Now, I can acknowledge I'm not much in control of what happens between NATO and Russia, but I am in control of my soul. I am in control of my identity, my individuality, the essence of what I am. And I can promise you that I will seek for answers, and I invite you to join with us as we do that. I appreciate your time, and if you have questions or would like to share your life experience, your spiritual journey with us, you can send us an email at theuniversalmindchannel@gmail.com. I'll repeat that. theuniversalmindchannel@gmail.com. I hope to see you soon. I'll be back. You have a good day.